This video is gonna be for you backline player characters. If you are playing a mage or a cleric or someone that should be second rank, not in the thick of the fight, this is a video on how you can more tactically move, provide cover for yourself, and generally increase your survivability if you are being targeted by ranged creatures or otherwise becoming in danger because maybe you're the primary healer. This was brought to my attention by a subscriber, Indigo Figure, and they brought up in my comments on my cleric video that the cloistered cleric versus the war priest has a little bit of an innate advantage of being harder to focus down if your enemies are trying to get rid of the healer in that kind of traditional MMO style of combat, which makes a ton of sense in a world with magical healing. I took for granted that a cloistered cleric should be moving to king cover themselves and generally taking activities that make sure they are not in the thick of the fight. So in this video, we're going to talk about how to take advantage of the front line of your combat, the terrain around you, and use the take cover activity to best protect yourself from foes with ranged weapons. As always, if you like what we're doing here on the channel, please leave a like and subscribe. Easiest way to support the channel, leave a comment down below. And as a new project, if you're interested in what's happening at my current campaign at my table, please check out my Substack where I'm doing novella style write-ups of all of our campaign adventures. With no further ado, let's get into taking cover and tactical movement. So let's first understand what cover is. Cover is some sort of obstacle between you and your foe that most likely applies to ranged attacks, but if you're maybe fighting over a wall and there's a reach weapon involved, cover could also be involved in these sort of situations. The most basic is lesser cover, and this is a not really blocking object, but it's something between you and the target. This most commonly occurs as another player character, a monster, or an NPC, or something of that nature is in the way. There's something in the space between you and the target, and maybe it gets in the way of the shot, maybe it doesn't, so you get cover. Standard cover is a little bit of blockage by something solid, but not fully there. And then greater cover is a solid object. You are ducking behind the wall, you are around the corner. You technically still have line of sight, but there is something physically in the way. Greater cover is usually the harder to achieve and sometimes gives you a bit of a penalty on the return depending on how your GM plays that. Like if you're literally crouching down behind the rampart, you're going to have to like peek out to shoot. So work that through with your GM on how those kind of things work. But these are the various degrees of cover, and generally to get standard cover or greater cover, you need to use the take cover action. Standard can just happen because of where you're at in relation to the bad guy, and you may not have to take cover to get there, but maybe if there's something that would provide lesser cover other than a player character or another monster, you could take the take cover action behind whatever minimal coverage is there to increase lesser to standard and to increase standard to greater. That is somewhat at GM fiat, so do keep an eye on that. Talk to your GM on how they want to utilize cover and how they feel cover plays at their table, and come to a good consensus that if you're planning on doing a lot of this, especially if you're playing the cloistered cleric or just a sorcerer or another kind of backline character, have the conversation about what your GM's expectation around cover is and what yours is, and make sure you guys come together on that. So again, lesser cover, +1 to AC, standard +2 to AC and your reflex saves, and +4 on greater cover. So now we're here on my default tabletop, which if you have not heard this before in a previous one of my videos and you are a game master that runs virtual tabletops, no matter what system it is, create a default table. This is one where you set up that has all of your mods, all of your settings, everything exactly how you like it. So when you go to create a new game, you copy this world or this table over and you don't have to set up everything from scratch every time you start a new game. This is the simplest way to be able to have multiple games going or just not have to redo everything when it comes time. Now, we are discussing how to best utilize cover as a back rank character. So in this one, since I've been doing my cleric videos, we've got Kira, and Kira has been taking some ranged attacks from this little plant guy over here that Muriel is all over. So we have cast our 2-action spell and we have 1 action left. We are gonna try to get some cover so that we are less at danger of taking ranged attacks. So we just simply shift over here and we are behind Muriel, and we'll be getting +1 AC. Fantastic. How could this have been more tactical? How could this have been more tactical and a better use of Kira's action? Well, most monsters, if they have a ranged attack, it's usually 30 feet. This isn't true all of the time. And if they have a bow or a gun, right, that's all going to change. But if you know your weapons and you kind of know your range increments, you can make educated guesses that perhaps this has a 30-foot range increment. So not only could we get behind Muriel for cover by moving up here instead, we're now at 35 feet and we're going to be imposing a range increment penalty on that bad guy, as well as gaining the effects of cover by moving behind Muriel and still being relatively within range to do everything we need to with our party. Now, maybe if you had an aura and you were trying to keep Muriel in it, this wouldn't work, but these are the tactical movements, especially as a back rank character, that you need to consider when you're positioning yourself in the battlefield. In the greater scope of the battle, putting yourself behind this monster that has a trample effect, probably not ideal, but we're specifically talking how to give yourself benefits to cover. Now, some downsides to not taking the simpler action, because this has a terrain feature with this log. So we move to here, we get the +1. Next round, we're going to be able to take cover action behind this log, and we're not going to have to worry about where Muriel's position's at, because maybe Amiri's come down here, and Muriel's like, ooh, I got to get that flank, and your party now has moved, and you're no longer getting the cover benefit. So you want a more static cover benefit by using the take cover action as your third action to get behind this log. So great, last round you moved in, you got the +1. This round you're taking cover, you're up to +2, you're stable, the battle's pretty well set up. This big bad guy for whatever reason isn't just going to come over and clobber you, because this isn't a totally dynamic situation. I'm just trying to highlight what you can do as the cleric in these type of situations to give yourself the best armor possible when you're not the war priest rocking the heavy armor or the medium armor and the shield and all these other benefits. A third option that is not often considered by most players, and I think maybe some people forget about, but if you are in the back rank and you are taking lots of ranged fire because you are being focused down, this is something you can consider. So if we instead went with this one, we got the range increment, a couple more of these plant guys show up. Oh no, we're getting more ranged fire from over here now. There is an activity that I think a lot of tables maybe don't do right, or just looking around the internet, you might get some bad information, or if you came from Pathfinder 1, you might forget that this has changed. It is drop prone. So first of all, drop prone does require an action now. Coming from Pathfinder First Edition, it was a free action to just fall over. You do have to spend one now. And then there's some interesting things when you are prone. If you're coming from Pathfinder 1, you no longer just get the benefit from ranged attacks that you used to. It is strictly a penalty. However, while you are prone, regardless of what's around you and what's going on, you can take cover while prone. So it's a 2-action spend in this case. But if you are taking tons of fire, it might be worth it. Maybe you took some damage, so you drop prone, you take cover, you do a single action heal on yourself to keep you in the fight. And now you're rocking a +4 AC bonus from those ranged attacks. So what that would look like up here, we go ahead and drop prone. We are taking the off guard penalty, but we can now use take cover, get greater cover, and have the benefits of that AC versus these ranged attacks. This is a very specific tactical maneuver that you need to take in a very secure position, because you're now off guard if anyone gets through your melee line and comes up to, stick your cleric that's now on the ground. This is only to be taken if you're taking a lot of ranged fire, and it's from multiple angles that you really just can't solve for, and your cleric is in danger. If this is something you intend to utilize a lot, I highly recommend looking into the general feat Kip Up, so when you're done taking cover from all of this ranged fire, you can free action get back to your feet and then move into the battle as you need to with the cleric. So again, if you were playing a squishier target with not a lot of armor and you're in the back rank, some things to remember. Utilize your terrain. Oh, there's a stump here. Get behind it so you can take cover. Utilize your allies. Make sure you're behind them to get that +1 status bonus, because you don't have the higher armor class to rely on. And if things get really dire, don't forget you can take prone and take cover to get a 4 AC bonus and get you up to a number that's pretty respectable and will probably shed at least the crits you've been soaking, if not necessarily the damage. Because especially as the cleric, you're probably putting a little bit into dex, but you're not maxing it, and you don't have the armor, so your AC is several ticks behind everyone else. You will be the easiest target to crit. If you get a +4 bonus from greater cover, you're pretty much on par with most other classes other than the tankiest of classes like the champion or the guardian. So you're not going to be soaking crits. You'll probably still be taking damage. You'll be in a much better spot than soaking 3 to 4 crits. You can do everything while prone, and still cast all of your spells and do what you need to in the fight. As well as hopefully your allies by now have been able to relieve some of that pressure on you if you're in the back rank. And then lastly, don't forget about imposing ranged implement penalties on your enemies. We don't know all of the ranges, we don't know all of the bad guys' abilities, but by and large, 30 feet is very common. So if you can stay at that 35 to 40 foot range, you will be in better shape as the squishy character taking ranged fire. Now, if they have weapons, also it's important to maybe know your weapons. If they're using pistols or short bows, if they do have longer range, pay attention to where the enemies are at. Like let's say this was a short bow wielding character at 50 feet that is shooting you. Well, if you take the 10 feet over to here and maybe did we get, yep, look at that. We got behind 2 people for cover. That's another just utilization of range to benefit your defense. Also GMs, if there's a lot of targets between enemies, I will sometimes give standard cover. I usually requires if they're shooting through 3 for me, but also play with that at your table because if they're shooting through 3, 4, 5, 6 people, that's more than just lesser cover. But again, have those conversations at your table and figure out how you want to utilize that. So there you guys go, tactical movement. Make sure you're getting behind your allies, especially in relation to ranged attacks. Make sure you're utilizing your terrain to your best advantage. Don't forget, if the terrain cannot help you, you can always fall prone and get a bonus through taking cover that way. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Is there something I missed? Is there a better way maybe to do some of these things that I haven't thought of? I would love to hear about it and share with some others so we can have the best time on all of our 20-side adventures, and we'll catch you next time.